Okay, so today we're diving into a story that's absolutely blown up in the fashion world. And, we usually like to dig into business strategies and market trends and all that, but today's deep dive, it's a little different. It's a scandal that's rocking the fashion industry. We're talking about Mike Jeffries, the guy who basically made Abercrombie and Fitch what it is today. Well, the allegations against him are pretty shocking, to say the least.
Yeah, it's really not just about the brand's image.
Yeah.
It really gets at this like heart of power and how easily ambition can be like twisted and abused.
Right, and that's what we're going to try to unpack today. We've got a whole stack of sources here: court documents, firsthand accounts, official statements, the whole nine yards. And it paints a pretty disturbing picture. So, yeah, buckle up as we break down these charges against Jeffries and try to figure out how a fashion empire like this gets caught up in something so messy.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it all starts with Jeffries' arrest. Just this morning, federal agents took him into custody. The charges. We're talking sex trafficking and interstate prostitution. And it's not like this came out of nowhere. This arrest comes after a multi-year FBI investigation.
Wow, multi-year investigation. Okay, so this is serious business then. What are the specifics here? What exactly does the indictment say?
So the indictment names Jeffries, obviously, but also his partner Matthew Smith, and then this other guy, James Jameson, who they're saying was like a middleman. They're saying these three were like orchestrating these, they're calling them sex events at different places around the world.
Sex events. That sounds deliberately vague.
Yeah, you're right. It does kind of sound like something made up. But what they're getting at is pretty clear. The indictment says Jeffries and his little crew used their pull in the modeling world, all that power and influence they had to basically pressure young men into being at these things and engaging in sexual acts.
So they're basically using a modeling career as leverage, like preying on these guys' dreams.
That's the gist. They're calling their tactics coercive, fraudulent, and deceptive in the indictment. It's like they were setting a trap, almost luring these young men in with the promise of success in the modeling world.
God, that's chilling. Using their dreams and their vulnerabilities to get what they want. And the U.S. attorney, he's taking this very seriously.
Yeah, Brown Peace. He's the U.S. attorney for the Eastern District of New York. He gave a press conference a few hours ago, and let me tell you, his words were powerful. He really emphasized just how vulnerable young people trying to break into these industries like fashion or entertainment are, and how those in positions of power are supposed to protect them, not exploit them.
He straight up said that anyone looking to be part of, the whole casting couch system should be prepared to trade that couch for a bed in federal prison, which is quite a statement.
It is a strong statement. He's making it clear that this won't fly no matter how rich and famous or whatever you are, there will be consequences. But this isn't just about legal stuff. This is about real people, real lives that have been impacted. And one of those people is coming forward with his story.
You're talking about the former Abercrombie and Fitch model.
Exactly, David Bradbury. And his story adds this whole other layer to these accusations. It's a personal account. And it's disturbing. He's actually suing Abercrombie and Fitch, saying the company knew what Jeffries was doing while he was in charge and did nothing to stop it.
Okay, this is where it gets really interesting. What's Bradbury actually alleging?
He say he was pressured to have sex with Jameson. Yeah, he claims he was pressured into having sex with Jameson, and they made it very clear that this was his ticket to meet Jeffries. Like no sex, no meeting with the big guy, and no career boost.
God, what a horrible position to be in, feeling like your whole future hinges on something like that. But it gets worse, right? What happened at this meeting with Jeffries?
So Bradbury says he ended up going to this party at Jeffries' mansion in the Hamptons. And he says that's where he met Jeffries and was pressured into sex acts, which obviously directly links these accusations to Jeffries himself. It really gives those claims in the indictment some extra weight.
Right, so we have these very serious accusations coming from different sources, including a former employee. How is Abercrombie and Fitch responding to all of this?
Well, they're doing what you'd expect, trying to distance themselves from Jeffries and everything he's accused of doing. They put out a statement saying they have zero tolerance for any abuse, harassment, or discrimination.
Yeah, that's pretty standard corporate talk. But is it believable?
Well, Abercrombie Fitch is also really emphasizing that all of this supposedly happened before the current leadership took over. Remember, Jeffries left the company back in 2014. They're really pushing this narrative that it's a new day at Abercrombie and Fitch, a clean break from the past.
A clean break. It's hard to see how they get away from this. This throws a pretty dark shadow on that whole image Jeffries built. The all-American aspirational vibe of the brand. What do you think?
It's a stark contrast, for sure. And it raises a lot of questions. Did this behavior poison the whole company culture? Was it a blind spot? Or did they just choose to ignore the warning signs?
So many questions. And we're just getting started. You're listening to The Deep Dive. We'll be right back. I mean, we're already back. Let's keep going.
It really does make you think. Abercrombie and Fitch, under Jeffries, they weren't just selling clothes. It was an image, right?
Yeah.
Exclusivity youth, a very specific kind of beauty. And now we know this dark undercurrent may have been there all along. It's unsettling.
It really is. I mean, we've all heard these stories, right? Exploitation, abuse of power. But it always seems to be happening in these industries that feel so far removed, like Hollywood. This just hits closer to home for some reason.
I think you're right. It's different because it's a brand everyone knows. A lot of people probably even grew up with Abercrombie and Fitch. It makes you look twice right. Question what you don't see and how much we're willing to just ignore when it comes to brands we like. Okay, so we've got a company desperately trying to outrun its past, what looks like a really messed up web of abuse and manipulation, and a legal fight that's just getting started. But there's something else we need to talk about. The human cost in all of this.
Absolutely. We can't forget that at the center of this whole thing, there are people, real people, a lot of them young with big dreams who were used and manipulated. Their stories need to be heard.
Their stories and their bravery for speaking up. It takes a lot of guts to stand up to someone as powerful as Jeffries.
Yeah.
It makes you think how many others are out there too scared to say anything.
It's a good question. And it just shows how important it is to believe people when they do come forward, to make sure they know they can come forward and share their stories without worrying about what will happen to them. Earlier, you said that Abercrombie and Fitch is saying over and over that this all happened under a different leadership team. But come on, does that really let them off the hook?
That's a tough one.
Yeah.
And honestly, it's something I'm sure lawyers will be arguing about for years. On the one hand, the people in charge now weren't there when this was all going down.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, companies have a responsibility to own their past, especially when it comes to something like this.
Yeah, you can't just sweep this stuff under the rug.
Right. And these days, good luck trying to bury the past. People can find out anything online. Consumers are a lot savvier than they used to be. They want transparency. They want companies to own up to their mistakes.
So how does a company like Abercrombie and Fitch even begin to come back from something like this?
It's a long road. It's not easy. Putting out statements isn't enough. They have to show they're serious about changing. Creating a culture where being ethical and respectful is actually valued. And that has to start at the very top.
And maybe it starts with just admitting they messed up and taking steps to make things right.
I think that's an important part of it. It's about recognizing that this isn't just bad PR. This is about real people whose lives were changed by what happened.
So where do we go from here? This case isn't over, and there's still so much we don't know. What do you think?
Well, we have to keep in mind that these are still just accusations. Jeffries is innocent until proven guilty. But this whole thing, it exposes some ugly truths about power and how people abuse it and how dangerous it can be to stay silent.
You know, it's easy to get caught up in the shock of it all. But this boils down to something really important. It's a reminder that we have to hold powerful people accountable and do whatever we can to build a world where everyone feels safe and respected.
Couldn't have said it better. It's a call to action for all of us.
Yeah.
We have to be aware, ask questions, and demand better from the brands and industries we support.
This is a lot to unpack.
Yeah.
This whole thing, it's a reminder that we can't always judge a book by its cover, right? Especially in an industry that's obsessed with image.
It's exactly.
Behind all that glamour and beauty, there's always a flip side. A side where people can get exploited. And we're seeing that play out with Jeffries. And, you know, he was never shy about what he wanted Abercrombie and Fitch to be. He wanted thin, attractive people to represent the brand. Everyone else was, well, they weren't part of his vision.
He was pretty blunt about it, wasn't he? It was almost like he liked being exclusive.
I read.
And now with everything coming out about these allegations, it makes you see it all in a different light.
It does. It makes you wonder. Was this whole focus on a very specific kind of look? Was it just marketing? Or was there something darker going on, something that allowed this kind of exploitation to happen?
Tough questions, but we got to ask them. If we want to see any real change,
Yeah.
it has to start with facing the problems that let this happen in the first place.
Right. And that means understanding how power works in industries like this, the fashion world. It
Yeah.
runs on people wanting what they don't have. Young people, they look up to designers. They want to be accepted by that world, which makes them easy targets for someone like Jeffries. Someone who could make or break your career with a snap of his fingers.
Absolutely. It's like the perfect storm for abuse. And the worst part, this might not be a one-off thing. We've been hearing rumors about stuff like this happening for years.
And hopefully with a case this big blowing up, It'll give others who've been afraid to speak out the courage to come forward.
I hope so.
Hmm.
Bringing these things to light, that's the first step to making the industry safer and fairer for everyone.
Yeah, this whole situation, it's a serious reality check, not just for fashion, but for all of us. It forces us to face some ugly truths about the world, truths that we'd rather ignore, to look at the stories we tell ourselves and really ask, are they true?
It is. It's
Yeah.
about looking beyond the surface, asking ourselves, how do we put a price on beauty, on glamour, on success?
And are we okay with that price?
Exactly. That's what we all need to be asking ourselves. Because if we stay silent, if we pretend we don't see it, nothing changes.
Well said. We've covered a lot today. Shocking accusations, systemic problems, the power dynamics of a billion-dollar industry. This deep dive into Mike Jeffries' downfall, it's left us with more questions than answers.
It really has. But they're questions worth asking.
They are. And as this case moves forward, it'll be interesting to see how the fashion world reacts, how it adapts, and hopefully how it learns from all of this.
I think that's a good place to leave it for today.
I agree. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, everyone. Keep asking questions and use your voice to make the world a better place. We'll see you next time.